Hello fellow booktubers, my name is Lauren and you're watching Dreams, Books, Courage, and today I'm going to be doing my January through May wrap up. And if you've seen my spring currently reading video, then you know that I haven't really been posting a lot of videos within the past few months because I've just been very busy this semester, but I'm back and I'm so excited to be filming videos for you guys. Today I'm sharing with you the books that I read from the months of January through May, and you might be thinking, how are you going to fit that many books into one video? But I have not been reading that much at all this year, which is fine because I set my Goodreads reading goal to only one book and I've already completed that. I'm already 500% complete with my Goodreads reading goal, and I'm very happy that I set it so low, so then I can really just do whatever makes me happy instead of just feeling like I need to read a certain amount of pages every day or anything like that. But I have managed to finish 5 books within the past 5 months. So I'm averaging about a book a month right now, but I have really been enjoying what I've been reading, even though it's mostly been books for school. So let's go ahead and get into what I've been reading. So the first book that I finished in 2017 was Milk and Honey by Ruby Carr, and this is actually a collection of poems. This is all modern poetry, which I'm not really used to because I'm used to reading like the classics like Eliot and Shakespeare and poets like that who are not really living in modern times. So I was very happy to pick up this collection, especially since I haven't really read that many women poets. And I did quite enjoy this collection. It's divided into 4 parts, which are the hurting, the loving, the breaking, and the healing. And I personally feel like I related the most to the loving section. Depending on what's happening in your life right now, you might relate to one section over the others. And so I find that very intriguing about this and part of why I wanted to pick this up so badly. I actually originally picked this one up for the Christmas Booktubeathon, but I didn't finish it in time. But I'm still very glad that I read this. Some of the poetry was a bit of a hit or a miss for me. A lot of it I did really enjoy, but it doesn't really follow traditional poetry conventions. And honestly, there isn't really any like rhyme or meter to it, which is fine. All poetry doesn't have to be like that, but I find poetry more intriguing when it is like that. So I did enjoy this, but it definitely wasn't my favorite bit of poetry that I've ever read. It was really nice to step out of the poetry that I usually read and read something more modern, but I really did enjoy a lot of the poems in here, along with the artwork as well, and I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. The next thing that I finished in January was actually for a class that I took, which was Introduction to Literary Study, and that is The Tempest by William Shakespeare. I think this is the 5th play that I've read by Shakespeare, but I've seen like 2 other plays by him, so I've definitely read and seen a lot of his works, but this play was definitely a lot different from his other works, and it's very intriguing how different it is. This play is kind of between 2 categories. It's usually defined as a tragicomedy, meaning it's kind of part tragedy and part comedy. Mostly though, I would say it's happy, but it just has some like tragic characters within it. This takes place on an island in the middle of nowhere and follows the character of Prospero, who is a magician, and his daughter Miranda, and you kind of find out more about these characters along the way. And then a shipwrecks on that island, and so now a bunch of royalty is stranded with Prospero and Miranda, but the royalty doesn't know that they're there. So the play is kind of 3 different groups of people, and it's very interesting in that way. There were definitely some parts in this that were super funny, and I really enjoyed reading them. I think they were in Act 2 mostly. That was probably my favorite act of this play. But like I said, this was definitely different from anything else that I've read by Shakespeare. I don't know exactly what made it feel so different, but just overall just reading experience, and I guess a lot of the magical elements. Although of course Shakespeare has magic in his other plays, this one just felt quite a bit different to me. But I did really enjoy this play and the characters within it, and a lot of his plays have a lot of court intrigue in them. And this one does as well, but it's kind of lesser, and I did enjoy that change of pace. And also the setting is a lot different because you're on this island the entire time. But I feel like this play is quite an easy one to read. I think it's like Shakespeare's last work, or at least the last known work that is attributed to him, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I did really enjoy this, and I would recommend it. If you're trying to find something by Shakespeare that's a little bit more readable, I would recommend this one. And also I really love the SparkNotes editions of these books, partially because I do really enjoy their cover designs. And also whenever you flip open the book, one side is the original text and one side is the more modern text. So what I did was I would read the original version and then I'd read the modern version, so I'd get a better feel on the text. So I would definitely highly recommend these editions. And also this play, I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars based on the other plays that I've read by Shakespeare. I think this is in the top 3 plays that I've read by Shakespeare. I did quite enjoy this one. And now we're moving on to the month of April because that's the month that comes after January, of course. No, of course it's not. But I did not finish anything in the months of February or March, so we're just gonna go ahead and move on to April. What kind of happened was that I had so much reading to do for these classes and it was hard to keep up with it, and so it just kind of snowballed from there. But in the month of April, I kind of picked back up on it until I got caught up and was able to finish novels again. So the first novel that I finished in April was The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon, which was actually a reread for me. The first time that I read it was when I was in like 7th or 8th grade, I feel. And so I feel like I couldn't really get that much out of it at that point in my life. And so I feel like I got a lot more out of it this time around. In this novel, we follow the main character of Christopher, who has autism spectrum disorder, which was formerly known as Asperger's. The disorder affects different people in different ways, and that's why now it's just a spectrum, because everyone is different. And so for Christopher, he's all about math and the sciences, and he's extremely smart. But in crowds, he gets super nervous, and so he'll often throw tantrums in crowds and do stuff like that. And so Christopher does face a lot of struggles throughout this novel, but he's very smart and he works very hard to solve the mystery of who killed this dog, which of course he found during the nighttime on the front lawn of his neighbor's house, and it was killed with a pitchfork. And so throughout this novel, that's like the main mystery. He's trying to figure out who killed Wellington the dog, but along the way there are other mysteries which he unravels, and part of it's just about Christopher growing up as well, while learning to cope with his disorder better. So I really enjoyed this novel. The writing style is very concise and to the point, so I personally really enjoyed that about it. Christopher would sometimes go off on tangents throughout, usually about some like type of math or something, and I'm not a big fan of math. I really don't care for math that much, but the things that Christopher was talking about I did find very interesting, and the tangents really made you think about different things. There were little drawings and stuff throughout that I also feel made this book even more enjoyable. Christopher is a very concise person, and so in his mind he always has to have things very, very organized and everything planned out. And I could relate to him on that level, and also on the level of him having some social anxiety. Although I don't really think I have that much social anxiety, I do have anxiety, so I was able to relate to him. Although of course not on all levels, I felt like I was able to really understand Christopher more. Christopher of course is on the spectrum of autism, so this novel only really helps you understand Christopher, but it's really hard to understand people on all parts of the spectrum within one novel because people are just so different and unique. But I'm glad that I was able to understand Christopher and really hear more about this disorder, and I really want to read more about it in the future. I would highly, highly recommend this novel. It was such a great read, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Drown by Junot Diaz, which is a collection of Diaz's short stories, but for the most part they revolve around one character who is named Junior and is from the Dominican Republic, but immigrates to around the New York, New Jersey area when he's about like the age of 10, I think. And so a lot of these stories are about Junior's life, both growing up and immigrating. I really enjoyed the writing style of this novel, and I felt like it really revealed some of the characters as well, just through the writing style alone. Diaz is such a great author, and I would definitely recommend you read something by him, and I'm definitely going to be reading more by him in the future. One thing that I really enjoyed about the short stories is that everyone has great areas to their characters, and even the main character isn't really that likable. Like, you kind of learn to understand him more by the end of the collection, but he's still not really that likable of a person. And all the other characters are kind of like that too, and they all have great areas, even members of his family. And so I feel like a lot of times there's usually one character who's kind of like gray, but in this novel everyone is like a normal human being. They all have their faults and things they've done that they regret, and just different things like that. So I really enjoyed just how real all of the characters within this collection really felt. The stories aren't in any particular order, or they don't always have a particular narrator, and so it can kind of be disconcerting at times, but for the most part I feel like it's not, and you can really get into the short stories. I would really recommend that you guys pick up this collection or something else by Diaz, because I think he writes a lot about the character of Junior and also just about that immigrant experience, which I feel like personally I haven't really read enough of that, and I also feel like the Dominican Republic isn't really talked about all that much. So I was really happy to read about characters from that area and to really learn more about that area and what they've gone through. And this also briefly mentions US taking over the Dominican Republic, and so I found that really interesting and very heartbreaking as well, especially when you see how some people live within the Dominican Republic. I found this read to be very important, and it just examines so many different people from different cultures and socioeconomic backgrounds, and so I just found this very interesting and a very powerful read, and so I give this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. And we are already coming to the final novel that I've read in the past 5 months, and I actually finished this one very recently, although it was assigned reading for my English class, which was Introduction to Literary Study, and that is The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man by James Weldon Johnson. This is such an interesting read, and I plan on doing a review of this very soon, so whenever I post that, I will be leaving a link on the sidebar and also down below, as well as a link to the review that I did of Milk and Honey by Ruby Carr. But anyways, this is told in an autobiographical style, and the reason why I just call that a style is because the narrative itself is not actually an autobiography. When it was originally published, it was published anonymously, so of course no one knew who this person was. And then it turns out in 1925 that James Weldon Johnson wrote this, and his life is nothing like the narrator's life at all. So it's very interesting why he decided to write this and publish this anonymously. The narrative itself follows a man who is half black and half white, and throughout this novel he really struggles to embrace both of his racial identities. And this novel also deals a lot with music, and I really appreciated that facet of this novel. It definitely made it more interesting to me to see how the narrator kind of combined the genres of ragtime and classical music. And the writing style of this was pretty great. I did really enjoy it, but the story itself I felt was kind of lacking at times. And obviously, to make this seem like a realistic autobiography, it kind of needs to be more like realistic, but to me some parts were just kind of boring. And although this is only like 150 pages long, it took me forever to get through this, and I think part of it was that I just wasn't super interested in the story and it didn't really grasp me as much as I wanted it to. Although I do think that this novel is very important, and I definitely recommend that you guys pick it up if you want to read something from such a different perspective. The narrator, as the title says, so I don't think this spoils anything, he decides to not be colored. He becomes ex-colored by deciding to pass as white in the end instead of accepting his African American heritage. So that definitely makes this such an interesting and unique read, but I'm definitely sad that this narrative didn't completely grasp my attention, so I only gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. But like I said, I still find this read to be very powerful, and definitely one that I think you guys should pick up. Thank you guys so much for your continued support at my channel. I also have a lifestyle channel, so I'll leave a link to that down below if any of you are interested. I would like to know what your favorite book is that you've read so far this year. Mine is probably Drowned by Junot Diaz. That one was just so powerful, and I just really enjoyed reading that one. But I would love to know yours down below as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and now I'm gonna go get back to reading.